The views expressed are those of the program's host, not necessarily those of the staff and management of WSTU or WPSL. This program is the property of Port St. Lucie broadcasters and may not be rebroadcast without written permission. And now, Perspective with John and Joe and your hosts, John Pearson and Joe Dorr.
Good morning. My name is John Pearson.
Hey, good morning, John. I'm Joe Dorr. I think you knew that already, though.
I guessed it. I just guessed it by your name tag.
Yes.
Boy, Joe, we've got a lot to talk about today. I was mentioning to you on the way over, I was listening to our third in charge of the United States, and that's Nancy Pelosi. And what a wondrous lady she is.
She is amazing.
And she's got a great suggestion for all of us, and that is stay home. Don't go to work because that nasty employer of yours wants you to get the virus. And that they're just waiting for you to get the virus and that they're against you. And it's best if you stay home.
I was wondering what she was going to say after Trump did what he did, and that is actually put something together while they're dithering in Congress trying to figure out who's going to be in charge of what. And it's just terrible what's going on. They just cannot work with each other, period.
Besides the fact that she's doing anything she can to go against the Trump administration, do you feel like there's something in there with the trial attorneys? You get the impression they're like wolves, and they're waiting to come in now and go after whoever they can to blame people getting the virus.
Well, it's become just totally political, and everybody realizes that. It's just who's being more political than the other is the only question.
You know, as a former employer of 125 fantastic people, I resent the idea that we have a leader of this country who looks at anybody who has a business that we're against the people that work with us and work for us. That is absolutely ludicrous to spread that kind of message to people, particularly people who are vulnerable now financially and who are looking for some help, maybe some assistance. And she's saying, well, we're going to give you $600 extra. You need to stay home and take it. She even stated, Joe, that you'd make more money by collecting the check.
Well, that's been the case. A lot of people that were looking to bring back their employees found they couldn't get them to come back because they were getting too much money. And some politicians were out there saying, well, that just isn't true. But the fact is the people that are on the front lines of doing business know it's true. And the other aspect of Pelosi is she's never been a businesswoman, as is the case with most of the politicians. So they cannot commiserate with business owners, and they look at business owners in a whole different view than the population does.
Well, the trial attorneys, the lobbies for the trial attorneys certainly contribute quite a bit of money, probably to both sides. But I would imagine that to the Democratic Party right now, they're probably one of the big sponsors of trial attorneys, and they're probably looking for a big payday. Not all of them, but I would say there's a pretty good chunk of them that are going to make some money on this pandemic, which I think is just really a sad, sad case.
Well, it is. It's sad, but you have to recognize that most of the politicians are attorneys, so they have no controls on them. They don't want to control the attorneys, and the attorneys are out there chasing ambulances. Ambulances being the issues that are going on in our population right now, rioting and everything else.
The only good news here, I think part of this good news is that tort reform will happen at some point. People would simply get tired of the attorneys going after everybody. The deal right now with the pandemic, trying to figure out that your employer somehow would be giving the virus to people. Now, look, if you work for somebody who's not providing a safe work environment, requiring masks perhaps, or not having enough of lotion, the sanitizer around, but to be able to go back and sue them overwards. Now, you know, in Florida, it's a right to sue state.
Well, the
day in court.
The most important thing, John, is that when people go to a restaurant or go to a business, they're sensitive to how that business is being run. So it goes far beyond the employees. It's the customers, and the customers become the quote unquote police to make sure things are properly done. And to try and sue somebody because you got the virus, how can you tell where you got it from? There's no way to determine that.
We had a situation years ago when I was in business, and we were doing quite well, and felt like we had a great reputation in town. We did a lot of business. We did a lot of work with people in the social end of it as well. But we had one attorney here in town that decided that you know what? We were a pretty good victim to go after. And he would sue us and he would send things in. And when I met with him, you know what he looked at me and told me in his office was that, look, being innocent or guilty, that has nothing to do with it. He says, I want $20,000 a month from you, Mr. Pearson. And I won't sue you anymore. Now, they don't have a case. They had no cases. But what his thing was that he was going to get me into papers all the time, and it would sure look bad. Now, none of it was true, but that didn't matter. He wanted 20 grand a month. That's a local attorney. By the way, he's still practicing.
Well, obviously, he's got to continue to practice. He didn't get that 20, did he?
Well, no, he didn't. Somebody, and I'm not really sure how this came up, but somebody found that he was throwing clients' records in his dipsy dumpster behind his office without shredding them. So when that was presented to him, he decided he would, I don't know, he took the right path and decided he would no longer try to sue me. But that's unfortunately the way you have to do business here in town with sometimes with trial attorneys. So, Joe, what's going on with the riots in Chicago?
That's a good question. I woke up to that this morning, and I have one of my sons living in Chicago in a really nice area, and this is one of the areas they were at. Obviously, someone took a shot at the police, and they fired back in self-defense, and the cry by the individual who was complaining about it was that the policeman continued to shoot him even though he was going down. But then, as I said to you earlier, if I'm in a situation like that and somebody's shooting at me, I'm going to empty my gun because I don't know if I got him or not. And I certainly don't want to get killed myself. So it's survival, basically.
So once again, we have a case where, excuse me, we have a case where there's riots and civil unrest over really a false flag. George Floyd was a false flag, and now we're possibly seeing this again in Chicago.
Well, it's the Antifa group. They're trying to just create havoc wherever they can, and it's all anti-America, basically.
Where's the press on this? Where is the press saying, hey, this isn't right? This guy shot at the police, was shot back, and in the heat of the battle, I guess he was shot a few more times. Why would people come out? And by the way, it's important when you do go out and riot, this might be part of the memo, make sure you break windows and steal things, because that really shows that you're sincere and you're expressing your right as an American to protest. I'm not sure if rioting goes down as a legitimate protest, Joe.
Well, it depends on who's looking at it.
So
Jerry Nadler said it didn't happen.
It's a myth. It's a myth.
Oh, yeah.
Now, he said that the Portland riots and the Portland takeover of the city and Seattle was a myth when he was asked by a reporter.
I heard that. And it was such an offhanded comment and didn't really recognize the fact that he was being recorded. But I don't think they really care anyway, because they're supported anytime that they say something that is off the mark. They're protected by the media for the most part. And it sounds like we're complainers here, but we're not really complainers. We're more observers. The way I view it is when I hear a story, I like to hear the story. As soon as I get past the first couple of sentences and there's an accusatory statement or leaning one way or another, you can tell immediately whether it's left wing or right wing. Just to have a story, this is what transpired. These are the facts, not interpreting what caused these things to happen.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I don't like to see where Republicans or Democrats, let's just use the polite term, exaggerate what's going on. But you're having these politicians now. Nancy Pelosi is one of them. She's probably the main one. And Chucky is another one. Nadler is another one. They have no problem with the truth because they simply don't say the truth.
No, they don't want to recognize the fact that it's our education system for many years has inculcated a hate for America, and that America is like a form of cancer that has to be changed and removed. And that's throughout the school system. And children in grammar school, high school, and college are being fed this information. And they believe that America needs to change. And this destruction of statues and trying to hide history is all about putting America out there for anybody to make a value judgment on without actually looking what we did to become what we are today.
What city was it, Joe, just the other day where the leaders of that city were coming right out and saying that there's really no need to teach history anymore in class?
I don't know what the city is, but that's true.
I believe it was Chicago. And the idea was, and I tell my little boys that you've got to know history because history repeats itself. And we're seeing it repeating itself now, perhaps from other countries. So this would appear to be a little bit like Germany years ago.
Well, very much so. In fact, that's where this Antifa type or anti-fascism started. If I have that correct. But in any case, it did start in Germany, and now it's gotten really big here in the United States. And the thing is that the extreme left in this country hates America, where extremists in other countries don't dislike their country necessarily. They just have their political views. But it's all about how bad America is.
Well, political views are important for all of us, and I like hearing all the views. As a matter of fact, folks, just a quick reminder, you're listening to us on WPSL 1590 AM and WSTU 1450 AM. And you can express yourself, and if you want to disagree with Joe, that's fine. I
have a number in New Jersey for that.
You can call that other number. It's probably one of those parlors out in San Francisco. The number to call in here is 772-220-9788. That's 772-220-9788.
I'd like to talk a little bit about this ballot situation. We're talking about
mail-in ballots?
Mail-in ballots versus absentee ballots. This vast confusion going on in a lot of people's minds that, first of all, an absentee ballot, you request, there is a format for making sure that it is sent to you. And a format when it's received that you actually voted. Whereas they want to do ballots and just mail them out to addresses. And in Los Angeles, they had, a couple of years ago, they had 1.5 million bad addresses, people that had moved out of town, passed away, but they weren't there. So in that situation, you would have ballots being mailed out to these people if the rolls aren't cleared up. And in most places, they're not. These ballots are just floating out there for anybody to sign. And they go to a house, maybe there's 5 people in the house, and 4 of them are older people that don't even know that the ballots are there, and somebody takes over and does the voting for
Joe,
them.
you sound like a typical Republican, typical conservative. You're trying to suppress the dead vote.
No, I'm a Democrat.
You're Democrat?
Yeah.
You want to increase the dead vote.
Whatever.
Okay. Well, I'm not so sure if that's going to help the Republican side as well. The opportunity for fraud and mischief with mail-in ballots is just fraud. It's just right there. It's to me, it's pretty obvious why that could be. And when you have one side, to me, that is pushing something so hard, particularly lately with the leftists and Democrats, when they yell and scream that Trump is going to commit fraud and it's going to be a fraudulent, that screams back at me that that's what we're going to do. So like little kids, let's blame it on somebody else first and take cover. Oh, it wouldn't be us.
Well, from a practical perspective, just look at the post office. Do you think they could use another 130 million pieces of mail floating through in a matter of a couple of weeks?
Sure.
I don't think so.
You know, you look back at the debate when Hillary was debating Trump, and somebody asked, "Did Donald Trump, are you going to in any way contest the election if you should lose?"
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Well, I might. Yeah, I might." I think at one of the times he said, "No, he wouldn't." But overall, yeah, I might. Well, sure, he might if it was clearly fraudulent. Then you had Hillary basically say no. Well, she spent the last 4 years contesting the election.
It's true. He was asked if he would concede the election, but how can he answer the question without knowing what the situation is? Simply, and she turned around and framed it in that he wasn't going to do that. Period. And that was totally out of context.
Do you think the last election, and I'm almost thinking that it's the same way coming up now, where it's, I like Donald Trump overall. I don't like some of the things he says. I don't like the way he says some things. I think he overtalks his message. There are times where just looking at him, it's like, please just sit down. You've made your point. Let's move on. But I know the last election, with me at least, was less about Donald Trump than it was about Hillary Clinton. In no way was I going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Oh, well, she's a woman. That's why. No. I think women have the opportunity to screw up the presidency just as much as men have the opportunity. And I have no problem with that. It was just that this particular person was not somebody I wanted. So I really voted for Donald Trump because I was not going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Do you see some of that coming up with Biden, Trump?
Yeah, I do. I think Hillary was kind of a hateful person in many respects, and a lot of people didn't like her. Now, I see what's happening here is I think the Democrats have really made a mistake, and that if they had somebody that had some timber to the character and their ability to think, they might have a shot. But I cannot believe that the American population would vote for Biden because he is having problems. He obviously cannot connect too many thoughts together without a lot of confusion, which happens to me every so often. Fortunately, not that often. But the point being that it's going to be whoever he brings on as a vice president. They were supposed to do that on August 1st. They're obviously in a state of confusion. He committed to having a woman of color. So now what does he do? He's got to find an explanation why he doesn't, if he in fact does not do that. Now, finding some of the well-known women politicians out there today, it's difficult to find someone that has groomed properly to become ultimately the president, which people believe would be the case because of Biden's age and his weakness mentally and possibly physically. I don't know. But I do know that if they had somebody stronger, they might have a chance to win because, unfortunately, people don't like Trump for what you said. They don't like how he overemphasizes things. They say he's a liar. He's an exaggerator. He's a hyperbole specialist. It's always the best. It's never been done before. And I find that we all find that irritating. But he is a good soul, and he's delivered on what he said he was going to do. And I've never seen, I think only a salmon swims upstream better than he does.
I think in a way he likes it. I think there's a challenge here as well. He certainly has been challenged every which way. Do the Democrats have anybody that's below the age of 80 that's in their main bullpen? You have Dianne Feinstein, who's 87.
87, I know.
You got Pelosi, who's 80. Biden is, 77, 78. Now, look, there's nothing wrong with being older. I understand being older. But there is a time where you go, hey, look, you need to pass this mantle down. You're supposed to be the party of inclusion. Where are the young people who have the good thoughts process on things? Ocasio, is she Cortez? Is she the one?
Occasional cortex, I call her.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, even better.
But just a quick one on Dianne Feinstein. She doesn't want Trump. She said this. She doesn't want Trump administration to be mean to China. She was at a Judiciary Committee meeting last week in California. She said, "We hold China as a potential trading partner, as a country that has pulled tens of millions of people out of poverty in a short period of time, and as a country growing into a respectable nation amongst other nations." I deeply believe that. That's a comment from an 89-year-old super liberal.
Well, it's difficult how she could possibly believe that if she knows any of the history. The United States did everything to help China back years ago, and they've done a lot with that. But the Communist Party has such a foothold that they're not going to go away. And my understanding is that anything that moves in China is controlled by the Communist Party.
Absolutely. They control the thinking of everybody in the country as well. One of the issues that we have here is that everybody is fighting everybody else, and it's been created and engendered by the press and by various politicians. And the thing is, we can be taken from within, and that's what's happening. China could never be taken from within because they are unified, controlled, and they were going in one direction. The only way China would be defeated would be from the outside. We can't be defeated from the outside currently.
You know, you've seen over the years where the Democrats have always seemed to take the African-American vote for granted, where that particular 13% of the population is going to vote for us, almost no matter what. In every election cycle, it starts to come up, well, we promised to do this, we promised to do that. You're seeing a lot more conservative African-Americans standing up now and saying, no, that's not correct. For one example, it's it's a program called the Hodge Twins.
Mm-hmm.
A couple African-American young guys, like in the mid-40s. Very, very fun guys. They're actually comedians, but they have some great salient points on their shows every day. I would encourage people to pull them up under the Hodge Twins. But they're fighting back. They're saying, no, you don't take us for granted. They have a very strong view of conservatism. So they're showing a different side of what we have always seen before, where African Americans are going to vote Democratic and forget it. Trump did a lot for that when he ran back in 2016, where he said, well, what has it gotten you?
Yep.
voting for Democrats so far. What do you have to lose? Which was a
Exactly.
great basic line.
And he has these economic zones that he started in communities that needed help to develop businesses. And he also had some prison reform, which helped a lot of African Americans that were unjustly jailed or had been in there longer than they should have been in there. Whereas you have Biden was creating laws going back maybe 20 years ago that really imprisoned a lot of African Americans that were not in jeopardy prior to the laws that he was pushing.
What's going on with this? And I don't imagine we're going to see a lot of mainstream press on this, but it's coming out pretty clearly now that Obama was directly involved in this thing against Flynn, the setup with Flynn, and that Biden was also involved in it as well. And some of the excerpts of some of the notes by Strzok from the FBI have come out. Are we going to see any movement on that? I mean, that to me is a deal killer. He said, I wasn't involved, and now it's shown by the notes from the FBI guy himself that, in fact, he was involved.
This is so frustrating because this has been going on forever. We have the information to make things happen, and the Durham report, we're waiting for that and waiting for that. Fact is, if it doesn't come before the election and Trump loses, we'll never hear about it again. So I have to think that there's powers in there trying to slow this process down, because I think it would be critically important, and that's my other thought, that maybe just by a chance Republicans are holding this back and they're going to let this go a couple of weeks before the election. But I don't think they're clever enough to do that, unfortunately.
No, and I think the Democrats want to see the economy stay tanked until after the election. And I don't know, maybe even after the election, the way it seems. They want a different economy based on the government taking care of you. I tell my little boys, the government does not have any money. It's our money. So when the government spends money, it's our money. Well, they've got to take it from somebody, and you got to go with the people who have the money. Those are the people that are out working.
Well, I heard Pelosi. We were listening to Pelosi on a report earlier this morning, and she said, "Well, we went down 1 trillion, and then, but we take $1 trillion here and $1 trillion there, and 60 trillion and 30 trillion." Does she realize that $1 trillion is 1,000 billion?
No.
I mean,
because it's not her money.
It's incredible.
And remember, Nancy Pelosi is after the children. Folks, you're listening to WPSL 1590 AM and WSTU 1450 AM through Perspective. And we're back with Perspective with John Pearson and Joe Doer on WPSL 1590 AM and WSTU 1450 AM. If you'd like to call in and share with the mayhem, call in at 772-220-9788. That's 772-220-9788. Joe, before we get started, I just wanted to do a quick shout out to my young men, and that's Max and Cody that I believe are listening, and maybe even Megan up in, I believe she's in Vermont these days, either that or New York or Tahiti, wherever she may be. But I never know. But I want to say hi to my young folks here. What do you got, Mr. Joseph Doer?
I don't think you should use the word mayhem when joining us because that fits too well into what's going on out in the outside world.
I wanted to blend in with the Democrats. Thank you.
Uh-huh. By the way, if anybody wants to advertise on this program, all they have to do is call me, Joe Doer, at 772-203-5620.
Well, we've got a lot of slots that have been filled up here in the last week, and we're looking forward to having more. And we do appreciate that, by the way. And we're setting up our GoFundMe has been extremely successful. Thank you all very, very much. Some of you don't want us to mention your names, and we will not. But we wanted to say thank you very much, and it's keeping us on the air.
By the way,
yes,
I was talking to Bob the other day.
Yeah,
and he was thrilled by the job you did when you went out to buy a car.
Well, thank you, Bob. Bob is a super guy, and I appreciate you telling him about my service. What I do is I help folks when they go out, they pick out a car that they like, and when it's time to negotiate, when they're ready to buy that car, whether it's a new car or used car or lease, or they're going to pay cash or whatever, give me a call. I meet you at the dealership or wherever you're going to buy the vehicle, and I will do the negotiating for you. It saves a lot of hassles. I think the car dealerships like it because it's a calm and orderly process, but they don't balance the federal debt on you. Bob happened to save about $1,800 from the best deal that he had previously gotten. That was the deal that he was going to do, and happy with it. One particular deal we did in Palm Beach just a few weeks ago, the customer ended up saving about $18,000 because the term they kept using was a repurchase. The car had been repurchased. And I asked him, well, what repurchase? That sounds like it's a lemon law car. Well, yeah, but we don't call it lemon law. Well, I know you don't. And the customer ended up buying it with an extra extended warranty. So you can actually save a lot of money. Please just give John Pearson a call. And my number is 772-485-8007. That's 772-485-8007. Save you a lot of money. Save you a lot of hassle and a lot of time.
007.
Yes, sir. What else you got?
Well, also, do you know that the Communist Party has endorsed Biden? How about that? Huh?
Saw that.
They said they didn't really care for Biden that much, but they didn't want Trump to get back in because if Trump got back into office, they were going to have more problems than they wanted to handle.
But I thought he was a close friend of the communists.
Biden?
No, Trump.
No, he's a close friend of Russians. Oh, no, I guess he isn't. Or is he?
Well, I thought he was a Russian mole.
He has a what?
I like it when they get him on the wrong words. Now, I listened to him over the last few years. You know, when he first started talking about it, he said, "Look, we were wiretapped," and they all scoffed at him.
Oh, I know.
There's no such thing as wiretapped. Well, you know what he meant.
Yeah, they were trying to make a fool out of him. So many of the things that he said in the past that seemed to be off the chain were right.
Isn't that fascinating about what Trump does? I think he plants seeds, and along the way, if you're not paying attention to him, along the way, lo and behold, you go, wait a minute, he was wiretapped. They were listening to him. And of course, now it's coming out that, do you call it a conspiracy? But you had the hierarchy. You had Obama, you had Biden involved in this deal with going after Flynn.
I know.
And I don't think we're going to see it out there in the mainstream papers. But
there's too much power up there. You'll never, ever see it. It's unfortunate, but they can get away with whatever they want to get away with.
You hear a lot about that this country is divided. I think it's been divided for a while back, but that's why we have a two-party system. It's not always bad to have that. Sometimes 51% gets it, sometimes 52%. Who's divided this country? When did this thing start?
Well, it started out that Trump divided this country. However, I have a couple of comments here that I had written down. That his inauguration,
Mhm.
None of the Democrats showed up. Only Obama and Clinton. Nobody else showed up. And sounds to me like Trump did divide the country by them not showing up. Can you imagine if the Republicans didn't show up for Obama's inauguration?
Well,
It would hell
Yeah.
to be paid.
oh yeah.
And how about 19 minutes after he was elected or inaugurated, excuse me, the Washington Post said impeachment campaign has started. That sounds a little divisive, I would say.
Well, I would guess that would be. Yes.
However, you can top that one though when Nancy Pelosi, like a fool that she is, tearing up his address to Congress
On national
on
TV.
national television in front of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, how absurd
Yeah.
was that? And then they spent 3 years, actually it's 4 years now, and over $30 million with 17 Democrats devoted all of their energies for that time frame in trying to impeach the president. It's just
It's
incredible.
fascinating. As soon as the Mueller report was showing really nothing there, they come right out with something else. And of course, the coronavirus has been something that's just fallen into their laps and turning this into a complete political mess. And it just simply is not. This is a very dangerous thing. We don't want anybody that we know and love to get it. I don't want anybody to get it. But we need to get out of it by practicing all the safe practices and so on. The confusion comes in when leadership on certain parts of our country, leadership says, look, you can't go to church, you can't go to movies, you can't go to school, blah, blah, blah. But however, you can protest. And by the way, protest is our American right, and I believe in it. But not rioting, not breaking into stores and looting. Yet that becomes okay. I don't see people on the left saying, you have got to stop this looting and rioting. Protesting, yes. But nevertheless, it's okay for them to be in mass groups. That's okay. But you can't go to church and you can't even go to the beach. You really shouldn't go.
Well, you take a 30,000 view of this situation. The coronavirus occurs. Trump shuts down travel from China.
Mm-hmm.
He gets berated for that.
Absolutely.
Subsequent to that, Biden apologizes or says something else to modify that statement. But that's because he was proven totally incorrect. And then when he closed down, I think, other countries coming from Europe, other people coming from Europe, that was criticized. The issues in New York where Cuomo was letting people into nursing homes and all of those people, older people who were subject to the worst results from this virus, ended up dying. And they've lost so many people, which you mentioned last week. But Trump has consistently been blamed for inaction. And there's nothing that anybody can put their finger on and say, yeah, he didn't do this or he didn't do that. He had a ship going to California, he had a ship going to New York City. He had the Javits Center, they had that set up with beds. None of that was used. And the ship that I think would hold 1,000 or 2,000 beds, I believe there were less than 50 of them used. And they needed to have the ventilators. He got the ventilators there. We needed testing. We've got the testing going on. He incorporated private industry to make things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And he's gotten zero credit. I have not heard anybody say what a great job he did, but only how badly he did.
They had to come up with something. The country I believe, was going to go right into this election with the best economy in the history of this country, greatest turnaround. Every group in this country was doing better and doing well. And how were they going to stop that? Well, along comes this virus. And I'm not blaming them for coming up with the virus. It's a worldwide virus. But I think the way they've handled it and the way they blame people all the time, and then you have the segment of the population that doesn't really pay attention. They're going to believe this stuff.
Yep.
It's really off the charts. You have in February of this past year, when we knew about the virus, this is when Trump had already closed off the travel from China.
Mm-hmm.
You had Nancy Pelosi that was in Chinatown telling people to come to the Chinese celebrations and safe, come on down. And yet you hear her now that Trump didn't react quick enough. She's one of the leaders of the country. And this type of pablum does not do a lot for our confidence in our leaders.
No, it doesn't. And the confidence in our leaders, I look at New York State, the governor, the mayor of New York City, those absolutely horrible politicians. And de Blasio, I think he just lives in another planet. I mean, he's done nothing for the city. The city is now reverting back to what it was before Giuliani came in there. The restaurants are closing. Broadway's dead. That won't be around for another year, until next year, maybe at this time. People are moving out. I have friends in the real estate business in Long Island, and business was slow. In fact, on Long Island, business was at a standstill when the coronavirus was coming into effect. Subsequent to that, with the riots in New York City, you cannot find a house, a listing. A listing comes up, it's sold, and it's sold at a premium. People are moving out of New York City, going to Westchester, going to Connecticut, and going to parts of Long Island.
Who would vote for de Blasio? Obviously, you've got enough people to get him elected. Who in New York City votes for him, and what type of percentage of the electorate goes out and votes?
Well, only 20% voted the last go around for him to get into office. And even to the degree now, there were some organizations that wanted to paint signs, some conservative organizations, and they aren't allowed to do it. But the Black Lives Matter, the painting of the roads, he said they didn't need a permit. He said it's a decision that he made. And the reason he made that decision, he said that, to quote him, he said, they didn't have to have the normal permit process, saying that Black Lives Matter transcends all normal realities because we are in a moment of this history where this has to be said and done.
So in other words, he absolutely said nothing.
He said nothing. No, he said he let them do that. They had a meeting at the Gracie Mansion, which is where he lives in the city. And it was a community meeting, and they decided this is what they wanted to do. They wanted to do they paint these signs on the street, particularly in front of Trump's building.
So basically, they run on the same platform, and that is we're going to make things better, and things are going to be super, and life is going to be great, and we're going to have a guy who feels for you and loves you, and yet no specifics. No, here's what we're going to do. If Trump has gone off the rails on this virus, what is it that you all suggest? Well, $600, everybody. No. About the virus. What do you suggest? What could Trump have done? What should he be doing now? You want all businesses shut down. You don't want anybody going to school. I happen to think we're going to see a big change in this country's view of the virus, particularly the news and the left-wing politicians the day after the election.
I agree with you. And I also don't know what the number is, but I hear it everywhere that hospitals get a fixed amount of money for every patient that dies of the coronavirus. Consequently, it makes it so much more sense if someone's dying of cancer and they happen to get the virus. You have a choice, column A or column B. Let's go with column B, virus, and collect some extra money.
Well, if you look at the number of people, that's correct. You look at the number of people that have died from the virus in New York State compared to Florida, which they have comparable populations.
Florida 22 million in Florida, 19 and change.
So it's comparable. So but you have a lot more deaths from the virus in New York. You kind of suspect that maybe people who have died of other illnesses are just check marked on the coronavirus.
It's about 400 to 500% more deaths in New York from the coronavirus than in Florida.
I'm sure that's just a coincidence.
Maybe not.
All right, maybe not. You can talk me into that. So the whole deal about dividing this country did not start with Trump, and it's great that's something I always try to come up with. I got a kick out of it when Obama was elected, and the race baiting and race things started to really come up again, and yet you have an African American guy that was voted in as president.
Yes.
Well, the African Americans didn't just vote him in.
I didn't vote for him, and obviously the white population did vote for him, and Hispanics voted for him. And when he did get elected, even though I had voted not for him, let's put it that way, I felt, well, maybe this could be a great thing for this country. This will finally prove that we're not racist. There's not systemic racism going on in the United States, and this is an opportunity for this country to really unite. And he took that mantle of being the first black president and used it to divide the country. He did not embrace the fact that he was elected and that it's accepted, and everybody, for the most part, loved him and they wanted him to be successful. And he took the total wrong tact. He could have been one of the greatest presidents ever in terms of unifying this country, but he chose to go in the opposite direction, and things have gone downhill since.
Well, if
if
it all becomes peaceful and sweet and nice, then Al Sharpton will not have a job.
Well, I don't even want to get into Al Sharpton and how he started. He was a total fraud with the Tawana Brawley case back in, I don't know when it was, 80s, early 80s. She claimed she was raped by a New York State cop, a trooper actually. And this New York State trooper spent a fortune trying to defend himself with attorneys. And finally, at the end, was discovered that Al Sharpton, the whole thing was phony.
Oh, yeah.
He knew it, and he knew it as well. We have somebody on the line. Hello, Russ.
Yep. I was contemplating, had we had coronavirus parties when this first started and exposed every single able-bodied person, this would have been done in March, and I'd put money on it. 1/10 of the people would have died.
You know what? I totally agree with you. I was around when they had that N1, H1, whatever. We lost 116,000 people in this country, and we had half the population then. But it was over with in a short period of time.
Yep.
The herd immunity, right?
That's kind of what it is. It sure is. And I agree with you. The day after the election, this is pretty much, especially if the Democrats get in, this will totally disappear. It'll be gone overnight.
I believe you're right.
Yeah,
I think
Russ.
they're going to keep it alive and so on. But in the meantime, we've got to get this thing past us and get Trump elected.
Yep, I'm with you there.
Well, we appreciate the call. Any other comments?
No, that should do it.
Well, thank you, sir, for calling in. That's great. Appreciate it.
You have a good day, Russ. Thanks.
Russ called in on 772-220-9788, 772-220-9788. We're very interested in your comments. And if you want to disagree with us, I can't imagine anything to disagree about, Joe, but just in case. Hey, what's the deal with Senator Feinstein and this China comment that she made? That was interesting.
I don't know, other than the fact that she believes that China is a friend of this country, as Biden believes that China is not an issue. He thinks that there's nothing wrong there, and Trump is being, let's say, unnecessarily harmful to China, trying to step in their way of progress in every way he can. And China basically will take us over if we let them get more involved in this country. They have corporations in this country. They have the communications in this country.
Look at TikTok.
The TikTok is a big issue. Even Zoom. Zoom is basically based out of China, and everybody's using Zoom right now. So that all of that information flow can be picked up by the Chinese. The thing is that we are, in that regard, we're a very kind, soft population. But by the same token, we are also such entrepreneurs that sometimes we get blinded by making money with China. Look at the NBA. NBA loves China because that's such a tremendous source of income for them. And they don't realize the long-term negative effects that China is going to have on the United States. They want to take us over. They want to be the money, the international money, instead of us being the number one money. That is the United States dollar. They will, when they're militarily set, they would have no issue trying to start war with us.
You brought up the NBA. It reminds me of the NBA, the NFL, professional sports in general, where or baseball, you're having the athletes take a knee before the games, and I was listening to Herschel Walker, who of course is one of the greatest football players of all time, and he owns a chicken, some type of chicken company now, and so on. And he brought up a really good point, and I have agreed with this before, and that is, look, again, you have a right to protest. You have a right to show that you're protesting, but don't do it on my dime. I ran my business. My people are there to work. They're there to make my customers happy. They're not there to protest. But you can protest all you want when you're off of work. No problem. Don't do it on my property. Go somewhere elsewhere. Where have these NBA players been as a whole? Where are the baseball guys? Where have the football guys been all year before the season? Have they been protesting? Have they been marching? Which is their right. They should be doing that. But I don't put up and don't want to put up with these guys protesting on the dime. They're working. They're employed. So this deal about, well, it's my right. No, not actually. It's not your right to protest when I'm paying you to do something. Why doesn't let's say Roger Goodell, why doesn't he step up to the pump and say, hey, guys, we've got a business here, and business is football. So when you come out, do whatever you want to do off duty, but when you're on our dime, you're going to come out and play the game. You're going to stand and salute the flag or put your hand over your heart, whatever. But you're not going to disgrace it, and I happen to think that's what it is, on our dime. Why don't they have the cojones to get up and do that, Joe?
Well, I'll tell you what, if it's just an industry, a business, and your employee is doing something to turn your customers off, you'll fire that employee. You have to conform to what you're being paid to do. If you don't like it, quit, move someplace else. The customers, that's us, the sports fans. Do you think a lot of the customers like that, kneeling and disrespecting the flag? No, they don't. And I do believe that the NBA, the Major League Baseball, and the NFL are going to pay dearly financially because they're losing customers. I know that they've lost me, and I was a tremendous sports fan. I'm a college fan now, college football.
That's right.
Until they start kneeling. God willing, they don't. But the issue is, you're 100% correct. You're an employee. You don't do anything that's going to interfere with the owner and customer relationship, and that's what they've done. That's what they're doing here.
What do you think, Joe, happens if Biden was to win?
I'm really afraid because one of the issues is they'd be more than happy to give citizenship to illegal aliens or illegal undocumented. Undocumented means like they lost their documents. No, they're illegal. Mm-hmm. And these people will vote for the liberal side and the Democrats, and there'll never be another Republican. The border will, I think Biden said he was going to stop with the wall. He doesn't even want the wall. He might even made an indication that he would tear some of it down. Point being that once they have this power, they don't have to worry about elections anymore. They'll have elections, but it's like Putin's elections. It's going to be the same party in and the same people going and running the country.
The real nightmare would be if they win the Senate and they keep control of the House and Biden's in office.
If Biden gets in, they probably will have won the Senate or the control of the Senate.
Absolutely. My thought process is I truly believe that Trump is going to take it. I think he's going to take it quite handedly. It's almost where you want to have your voters know that it's going to be a close, tight election. You've got to come out and vote. I happen to think it's going to be a real, not a landslide maybe, but a pretty close. But you can't say that because then some voters will go, I'm a little tired. He's going to win anyway. No, you got to get out and vote.
Oh, no, they've got to get out and vote. And I think if you look what's going on in this country, how many people are buying guns because people are calling 911 is like calling a techie guy to come over and fix your transistor radio. It doesn't serve any purpose. Fact is that we are going to have serious problems continue. But I think the general population recognizes the danger we're in, and it could be a landslide for Trump. However, God forbid it's close, and Biden decides he doesn't want to concede, and here we are in January and February, and it's jump ball who's president. It could be a real mess.
Well, the only good news is that you would still have Trump in office, and he'd be able to work his magic as opposed to the election before, where you had two guys, and either one were in office at the time.
Well, the truth is Trump isn't leaving anyway. I've read that in the paper a couple of times. Yeah,
exactly.
He's decided he's going to stay on.
Yeah.
Regular. Yeah, for the next couple of years anyway.
You remember in the last day before the election, the newscasters. I was watching it, but they were going over where the candidates were going to be in the final night before the election, and they mentioned, and Trump is going to be up in Ohio and Pennsylvania, and the guys were going back and forth laughing. What a nut! He has no chance up there. That's the. I mean, there's no chance. That's the iron wall. They're gonna, he's gonna run into it. And of course, when he took those states, and you realized, only one reporter made a comment, and the comment was, "What does he know that no one else knows?" Well, he must have known something, and to have gotten that. I remember sitting around with my boys. We were watching the election, and when Florida went for Trump, that was it.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. You knew what was going to happen. I remember telling my guys who kept up with me, and hey, I think Trump's going to win.
I was talking to my son in Chicago. He says, "Dad, the Las Vegas odds are now looking like Trump's going to win this one," and then they called it.
Yeah, it was outstanding. I think you're going to see that again. The big thing is that Republicans have got to vote in the House and got to vote in to keep that Senate.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't have, I don't think they would have lost the Congress if it wasn't for that Russian collusion thing going on for a couple of years. We could have had control of both the House and the Senate.
And maybe if the Pelosi thing had gone a little different, that deal with Clinton. So,
yeah.
What else do we got here? We got 1 minute left. What's
1 minute left. Oh, I don't know what we're going to talk about.
That is perspective for this Monday.
What's my perspective?
Listen to us every Monday at 10 a.m. on WPSL 1590 a.m. and WSTU 1450 a.m. This has been John Pearson
And Joe Dewar.